Hi everyone, I'm Tammy Mastroberte, founder of Elevated Existence and publisher and editorial director of Elevated Existence magazine. We are here today to chat with Alisa Vitti, who is the founder and CEO of Flo Living, an integrative health coach and women's hormonal health specialist, and she's also the author of her new book, WomenCode: Perfect Your Cycle, Amplify Your Fertility, Supercharge Your Sex Drive, and Become a Power Source, which is an awesome title, by the way. So thank you so much for joining us, Alisa. How are you?
I'm great, Tammy. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm wearing purple in honor of the book.
Fantastic. That is perfect branding. So I want to jump right in for people who haven't heard of you or know what it's about. I have to say, I've read through the book, and obviously being a woman, when I read through it, I thought, first of all, I had no idea all this stuff was going on inside my body, and then second of all, I had no idea that I really need to know this stuff. So that's what really I think is awesome about this book is you kind of take women's hormones and break them down and explain exactly what's going on for them so that they can kind of fix any issues that they may have. So actually, to kind of start off, I know the reason you even got into a lot of this work was because you kind of started researching the endocrine system and women's hormones yourself because of your own issues and things that you were going through. So can you kind of share with our viewers a little bit about what some of your symptoms were, what you were diagnosed with, and then how you were actually able to reverse all of it through some diet and lifestyle changes?
Yeah, I love what you said too, that, so many of us don't even know that we need to know this. And I
Yes.
think that's the biggest issue. I was just filming for CBS this morning, and, this question the producer kept asking is why don't we know this? Why aren't
Right.
we talking about this? Why isn't this part of everybody's conversation? And what's really cool about, and I certainly wasn't looking for my period to become, the holy grail of my existence, but you don't appreciate how hormones affect everything until they start to affect everything. And
Right.
that's precisely where I found myself. If you want to picture me 15 years ago, I was over 200 pounds. I was covered face, chest, and back in the most severe cystic acne. I was exhausted, depressed, and I was maybe getting my period once, maybe twice a year. Okay.
Wow.
I was, I just couldn't function. I was at Johns Hopkins University. I was on my way to becoming an OBGYN, and my whole life wasn't working because my hormones weren't working.
Right.
So it was through that experience that I really began to become naturally curious about what was going on inside of me and why was it not working and how could I make it work better. And there was one night I just couldn't sleep, and so I was at the library and I was doing some research to try to figure out what was wrong with me because no doctor could give me a diagnosis. And sometimes we need to have a label for things, right? To just
Right.
know what it is. So I found a little article about a condition, which at the time was called Stein-Leventhal disorder, and I'm reading all the symptoms, and all the bells are ringing, Tammy, in my mind.
Right.
I'm like, I have this, I have the obesity, I have the, acne, I have the lack of periods, I have all the symptoms, and this was a condition, right? So I tore out the article, I destroyed library property, I went to the gynecologist the next day, and stalked her in the parking lot. She's keying in the front door of her building with her coffee in hand. And I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
hi, I need a transvaginal ultrasound right now. And she's like, okay.
Oh, wow.
And, but she was gracious enough to indulge me. And lo and behold, I, in fact, had this disorder. And the name of the condition that we more now refer to it as is polycystic ovarian syndrome, which 1 out of 4 women suffer with
Wow.
in the US alone. So that means at least 2 or 3 women a day are going into the average GYN's office, and they're not really getting diagnosed because it can be so many other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Condition wise, on average for 4 or 5 years. So women can be suffering for a long time with this disease, and because of an important study that was done in 2009 with the National Institute of Health, which is called the BioCycle study, and I write about this in the book, and I think every woman should know about this. I want to make T-shirts that say, I read the BioCycle study.
Right.
And on the back, did you? Because what the study proved without any equivocation was that even a little hormonal imbalance like PMS in your 20s and 30s, something that we joke about and say, oh, yeah, I'm just a different person second half of the month, and oh, whatever, you're supposed to suffer.
Right.
We now know that this is linked. Any hormonal imbalance in your 20s and 30s, be it something as serious as I had, like PCOS, something as what we think seemingly harmless as PMS,
right,
and anything in between, fibroids, cramps, all that, leaves us much more vulnerable in our older years, postmenopausal years, to the big four diseases of inflammation. So that's diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and Alzheimer's. Now,
wow,
I don't know about you, but I would start taking my period a lot more seriously
100%.
if I knew that it was a serious situation, right?
Right, of course.
So after I got the diagnosis in the doctor's office, I said, now what? What do we do? Now that we know it's PCOS, what can we do? And she said, there's really nothing we can do. There's no cure. There's no real treatment. All we can do is try to medicate some of the symptoms. And she said, and your prognosis will be obesity, diabetes, infertility, heart disease, cancer. These things will all have, you'll have increased likelihood for these things to develop. So we'll just medicate you for all of those things.
Oh, wow.
But we won't actually fix you.
Right, of course.
Right? And I thought, no, this is not for me. And it was one of those life-changing moments. And that's really what kicked me off into studying functional medicine, looking at nutritional genomics, the way that food micronutrients impact gene expression in terms of disease or health, and how food and micronutrients can turn on the whole organ system involved in hormone production. And the protocol that I designed is really based on that. How do we use food as a lever to switch on hormonal flow, the right kind of hormonal flow, versus what ends up happening with women without realizing it, which I know you probably discovered in the book. All these different things that are blocking our flow are things that we're eating, things that we're putting on our skin. So, it's really exciting. And of course, within a year of figuring out the protocol, my body shed 60 pounds, my skin, I like to get up close and personal, right? My skin looks amazing, and I've been ovulating and menstruating every month ever since. So, and every gynecologist I go to, they love checking. They're like, do you really not have PCOS anymore? And I'm like, go ahead.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Draw some blood, check it out, and they're like, wow, this is so fantastic to see. Because we have this idea in medicine that the body can heal, but we are also people that need evidence, and so it's really valuable that women can see their bodies and their doctors can see. I've had women who've had cysts that were pre-operable, just at the point where they were, maybe you need to come in and have it removed. Gone. Wow. 3 months on the protocol. So your body can do extraordinary things if you know how to use food to make it work the way that it should.
Right. And what's wonderful too is in the book WomenCode, you actually give people that information. I mean, you give them recipes, you lay out days where they can, here's a 4-day plan for you, so people can really, understand it and begin applying it right away. So
yeah, I like to give the goods. And
right.
What the fun thing is, that the whole process is delicious. I'm Italian. And everything that I am telling you to eat, I eat. It tastes good. It is good for you. And you get into what's really exciting, which is the cyclical eating plan, right? So you, in a 30-day cycle, have 4 distinct hormonal ratios that make up your menstrual cycle. Mm-hmm. And you need to eat in a way. You have to use certain foods each of those weeks to keep your hormones balanced. And it's really fun. We have women now. They're calling themselves WomenCoders. They're all over. I was in London just the other day. I just got back, a few days ago. And, I had women who hadn't met each other who were living the WomenCode lifestyle, cyclical eating for hormonal balance. And they wanted to meet because they had been supporting each other online. And they came to the book launch in London so they could meet each other for the first time.
Oh, cool.
I mean, this is it's exciting. We can not only change our bodies, certainly that the science shows us that we can absolutely use food to change our bodies, but we can, as women, can you imagine if the world was a little bit oriented toward our natural,
right.
the way we work? right? Our cyclicality versus sort of a masculine linear fashion, which the world is set up that. Can you imagine if we just had a little bit
A little
going
bit,
on?
yeah.
Just a smidge. So I get excited when I think about all the millions of women who could be woman coding in their lives and the kind of organic change that that's going to create inside of their homes, inside of their schools, inside of their careers. It's exciting. I'm excited in advance.
No, that's awesome, honestly. And in the book also, I know you lay out I think 5 different kind of underlying causes of what causes hormonal problems in women in the first place.
Right.
And so if you can tell us just a couple of those, and also, is it the same protocol, or is it the same, causes that we need to look at, whether we're dealing with PMS or infertility issues or even low libido?
I love that question. Here's the cool thing in my research that I found, and again, I've been at this now for 15 years, and here's what we know about the endocrine system. It is reliable and predictable. And this is why one protocol works across the board, because when you talk about functional medicine, we're not talking about spot treating the symptoms, right? So you may have the symptom of a period problem, or the symptom of low libido, or the symptom of infertility, but the root causes from the functional perspective, which is sort of how the body actually works, right, itself, are the same. And so when I break down those 5 underlying causes, they apply to anyone with any of those issues. And so here, shall I lay them out for you?
Sure.
So the first one is mismanaged blood sugar, right? Which is, everyone's doing this, right? If you skip breakfast, or if you start your day with coffee, or even just green tea and nothing else, right? This is still caffeine or something sweet in the morning, or just not the right foods for your body.
Mm-hmm.
You're throwing your blood sugar off, and then your endocrine system cannot do anything else except worry about, oh my goodness, do we have enough sugar for the brain, the heart, and the muscle tissue, which is the primary desire that it has, right?
Right.
And it speaks in the language of hormones to make sure that that's happening. So that's the first underlying cause of any of these issues that we're talking about, be it period problems, fertility, low sex drive.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is adrenal burnout. Now, I don't know any woman who isn't doing it all simultaneously, burning the candle at both ends. It's a wonder we all look so fabulous.
Right, that's true.
Because, we are just like crushing it out there, but we're also really stretching our adrenals to the max.
Right.
And adrenal fatigue, think of it like it's putting your body, your endocrine system, in a state of high alert all the time. And so that is a chemical signal, cortisol and adrenaline from the adrenals, to the brain, telling your brain that it's not an ideal time, right, to maybe have a healthy cycle, or have a sex drive, or make a baby, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
other priorities here. Our sugar's not stable, so the brain and the heart might not get what they need to function, which is a really bad news, right? And then now there's all this stress, and so it's just, this one of those deep root causes of why the body doesn't work the way that it should.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is congested pathways of elimination. So primarily here I like to look at the skin, the liver, and the large intestine, although the lymph is really important too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I sort of list in the book, ingredients you need to not be putting on your skin, right? And so I want you to read your potions and lotions,
Right.
and make sure that they're not containing endocrine disruptors, because a lot of these synthetic chemicals are known endocrine disruptors. It's not just me saying it, it's like the FDA saying it,
Right.
and yet they're in the products nonetheless.
Right.
And you as a consumer have to be very, very cautious about what you're using so that you're not messing with your delicate hormonal balance. But in addition to that, you have to be eating foods that help your body break down hormones, right? You're producing all this estrogen every day, for example. But too much of that estrogen can cause estrogen-dominant symptoms, which can exacerbate any sort of symptom you may be dealing with, or condition you may be dealing with. So eating foods like kale, for example, or having more fiber in the form of flax or chia helps your body get that estrogen out.
Right.
We want. So there's that. The fourth underlying cause has to do with, we mentioned earlier this distinction between linear living and cyclical living. And so many of us are so disconnected from our cycles that it becomes a problem, because we're doing things and making choices in our workouts, in our food, in our prioritizing our everyday life that are at odds with the natural hormonal rhythms that our body is providing. Whether you like it or not, your body is in a continuous state of hormonal flux.
Right.
It changes the way you think, it changes the way you feel, it changes the way you exercise. And you either walk around working with that, or you walk around trying to ignore it, and it's kind of shooting you in the foot, right?
Right.
So that's a definite underlying cause. And the last underlying cause has to do with this conversation about feminine energy. And I know here at Elevated Existence, I can say that, and you ladies will know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Feminine energy and your relationship to yourself as a woman is absolutely showing up, right? The state of the union around that is showing up in your period, in your sex drive, and in your fertility, right? So really investigating the subtle ways you can engage feminine energy in a very practical way. And I outline 7 principles of feminine energy in the book, and ways that you can actually start using more of that in your everyday life to bring some healing to this balance between your masculine and feminine. I'm not saying get rid of your masculine. I'm just saying turn the volume up on your feminine, and it's an important part of the process. Right,
absolutely. And now another thing I thought that was, I think a lot of women can relate to, and that made a lot of sense, was a lot of times when a woman goes to their gynecologist and they complain about PMS or menstrual cramps, or, oh, I get a migraine every month, and the first thing a lot of these doctors say is, oh, I'll put you on birth control. It'll take care of all your problems.
Right.
And all the symptoms go away. But which is nice that all the symptoms go away. But can you explain a little bit about, which I thought was really awesome, why is it that quick fix and that, yes, your symptoms go away, why is that really something that we should be looking beyond?
Great question. Here's the story. The story is that the pill doesn't fix those symptoms, right? Just like straight up, that's not what it's doing. What it's doing is it's shutting off the conversation between your pituitary gland, which is located in between your ears, like mid-brain, and your ovaries. And this is why you won't get pregnant on the birth control pill, because you're not ovulating.
Right.
That's what the pill is doing. So it's just temporarily masking those symptoms. And as soon as you stop taking the pill, not only will all those symptoms come back, because they were simply, think of it like putting your body in a state of suspended animation. All those symptoms are going to come back. But now, let's say you've been on the pill 15, 20 years, which is more and more common these days.
Right.
And in your mid to late 30s, you finally met the perfect partner and you're all ready to make a baby. And you've had this suspended animation of these hormonal imbalances that you've been able to ignore. You've had a false sense of things are okay in your body because you've been on the pill. And then you go off and you want to get pregnant, and all of a sudden, your hormones are all over the place.
Right.
And you can't ovulate and you can't get pregnant. And where are you going to find yourself? You're going to find yourself on the fast track to having to use assisted reproductive technologies like IVF.
Right.
Then you're all of a sudden injecting yourself with even more synthetic hormones and whatnot. And whatever had you hormonally imbalanced that caused you to seek out medical attention that ended up having you be on the pill, right, in the first place, is one of the underlying reasons why you may have fertility problems later on. So I would much rather see a woman who's hormonally sensitive in her 20s, having cramps, having acne, having heavy periods. I would rather her take 3 months. That's all the protocol takes.
Right.
I would rather have you take 3 months, do the protocol, watch your symptoms go away, and then if you want to use the pill for birth control, that's okay.
Right.
At least you're using it from a place in your body where you're hormonally balanced. I don't want women waking up 37, 38, having 20 years of a hormonal imbalance that they have to treat overnight.
Right.
You're really putting yourself you're making things harder on yourself than they have to be.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, I mean, I just know, just from my friends and in my life, I don't know anybody that doesn't have some type of PMS symptom, something going on. You know what I mean?
Every woman's dealing with this, and yet there is no easy, natural solution for us until now, until WomenCode.
Yes, fantastic. So actually, the next question is really, if you can explain a little bit of how does the food we consume and the lifestyle changes that you talk about, how does that actually regulate how does that go about regulating our hormones? And if you can maybe just share one or two things that people could start with today just to make a difference.
Love that. So, the food is the most powerful drug that we have, and many of you watching probably feel that way. Here's how it works. In the WomenCode system, what we do is we use food to make the function of the endocrine system what it's naturally wanting to do in that predictable, reliable way. We use food to help it do its job, right? So we want to eat foods that are blood sugar stabilizing. We want to eat foods that nurture our adrenals. We want to eat foods that make sure that we're metabolizing hormones as quickly as we can. And we want to eat foods that sync with our cycle week over week. So we're optimizing the production of those hormones and optimizing the metabolism of those hormones, okay? Mm-hmm. I want you to be using food each week of your cycle to improve hormonal production and optimize hormonal metabolism. This way, if you're using food in this sort of endocrine-friendly way, you're treating symptoms at the root cause. You're actually preventing symptoms from happening in the future. So it's this kind of delicious cycle. Instead of our hormones kind of being in this vicious cycle all the time, it's this delicious cycle of continuing to feel good all the time. And that's the big message for me, for women, is, this belief that we have that because we have women's bodies that we're supposed to suffer and not feel good most of the month. The body, the science, your biology, your hormonal biochemistry shows us that that's not true. That's a falsehood. Somehow we're buying into this idea. But the fact of the matter is you can feel fantastic all month long. Mm-hmm. And I really want women to experience that.
Right.
So some foods that you can start with right now. I mean, I'll give you my top two, things that I don't live without, that are going to have huge nutritional bang for the buck, that are going to sort of multitask for you in many different ways.
Okay.
I'll give you three. So the first one is avocado. Avocado is a nutritional powerhouse. In fact, there's a study that I share in the book about how women who are going through IVF, if they eat 3 avocados a week, that they have, versus women who don't, they have a 3.5 greater chance of a successful outcome than women who are not eating 3 avocados a week.
Wow.
Super powerful for your fertility, super great for all sorts of hormonal health. The second one that I love is sunflower seeds. Sunflower seeds are rich in micronutrients that nourish the adrenals, and so many of us, like I said before, are dealing with stress on a level that we just have not time in the past. And so sunflower seeds are a really great way. I eat them every single day.
Okay.
Every single day, and I really think it's so important to get those in. And the third is kale. Kale is full of 2 key ingredients that help break down estrogen, 3-indole-carbinol, and something called DIM. And this together just helps metabolize estrogen, and just really, for so many women who are struggling with, endometriosis, fibroids, ovarian cysts, PCOS, PMS, all of these symptoms are estrogen dominant at their core.
Right.
And eating foods that help sweep away that estrogen makes a huge difference.
Right. That makes sense, actually. So also in the book, you kind of talk about, and you spoke a little bit about it here, the real importance and kind of the 5th underlying cause of hormonal problems is really engaging that feminine energy piece of us. So can you explain a little bit to people kind of why that is so important, and maybe some ways that they can start to kind of engage that energy for themselves?
I love talking to women about their feminine energy because, for me, it was a huge blind spot. And, one of my mentors always says, you teach what you need to learn. Yes. And for sure, I needed to learn some feminine energy. I was just lecturing in London, and whenever I lecture, I always watch women's faces when I start talking about, real specific details about, like, say, for example, the color of menstrual blood, right? And how it can tell you. There are 4 different colors and textures, right?
Yes.
That you look out for. And, I was sharing this on Dr. Oz, and he did not flinch. But I see a lot of women when I go through this and I teach about it, roll their eyes, gasp, they get all sorts of uncomfortable.
Right.
So that's fine. I don't take it personally, but what it indicates to me is that you who are doing this may have a real aversion to your own bodily functions, which are natural and fantastic, right? And miraculous. So, if any of that is going on, we need to do some house cleaning there, right? And just really investigate that. But then once that's taken care of, then I want you to start engaging this idea of the feminine, which is cyclical. If the way I look at it is masculine energy is linear and feminine energy is cyclical. It's really simple. It's based, in our physiology, in sort of the natural elements. It's just sort of how I look at things. Mm-hmm. So how can you in your life, right, instead of just thinking of your day-to-day as this never-ending ladder that you're climbing. You're either on your plan, on your to-do list, or you're off, right? Because you can only either be on a ladder or off a ladder. You can't be like halfway on a ladder. It's a very dangerous situation, right?
Right.
So, instead of only operating that way, right, where you're either succeeding or failing, right? So it's very binary existence. Mm-hmm. How can you operate in a way where you're collaborating more, where you're incorporating how you're feeling and thinking, where you are taking time to incorporate some self-care, all of this more inclusive energy. If you look at a spiral in 3 dimensions, it looks a lot like a basket or a vase, right? Some sort of vessel. And it's this idea of holding space is really what a spiral does, right? So, how can you hold some space? And in the book, I give there's a questionnaire that you fill out to try to assess where you are with your masculine and feminine balance, right? Mm-hmm. And then I want you to start practicing the 7 principles of feminine energy. And one of the first ones, is really just recognizing that you do have a female body. It is different than a man's. And that is an asset that you want to utilize, or you want to lean in to your hormonal fluctuations and start to see, I can have easier time asking for a raise this week out of the month, so I'm going to go out of my way to try to schedule that with my boss, as opposed to another week where I'm much better at organizing and bringing things to completion and administrative detail. I'm going to do those types of things that week, right? Leaning into that is one way to engage your feminine energy. But another way is to focus in on increasing pleasure, right? And not in the sexual way necessarily, although if that's happening, good for you.
Right.
But I mean, in the way, like, for example, if you send an email, are you sending that email from your masculine place or from your feminine energy place?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So is the email, you get an email from someone, they've written you a note, and you just write back, yep, done. Right?
Right, absolutely.
Dash between the yup and the done.
Yes.
You want to show them that you thought about it for a second.
Right.
Maybe it's just done. Thanks. Mm-hmm. Like, that's it, right?
Yes.
Or you take the time, or do you engage your feminine a little bit more and just say, hey, Susie Q, so glad you wrote. Really loved working on this project with you. Hope we get to do another one together. Here's my final deliverable for you. So excited. XO, whatever.
Right.
That's your feminine, right? Where you're incorporating both hemispheres of your brain, you're connecting with this person, you're collaborating, and which of those emails is more heartwarming to write?
Oh, of course.
Right? This is such a subtle example of how we can engage our feminine on a more continuous basis. Now, sometimes a short email is like totally what's needed, right? Mm-hmm. But being able to select and choose and engage when you want to, as opposed to just kind of being caught up in always being the same way.
Right.
That's power, right? So being able to leverage your masculine in the right situation or your feminine. Think about how this would apply to your romantic partnerships. How many of your girlfriends do you know have broken up with men because they have complained that they don't take leadership enough in the relationship? He never plans anything. He never organizes anything. He just, he's got boyfriend disease.
Right.
He just sits on the couch and he doesn't do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, was there a culture where there was no space for him to stand up and take leadership? So many of us are so entrenched in our masculine energy. I know I was guilty of this in my last relationship. Mm-hmm. I'm very happily married now, and we are both very conscious about engaging our masculine and feminine energy in a balanced way.
Right.
Prior to that, in my last relationship, it was sort of simultaneously where I was starting my practice. So this is a long time ago now, but I was running my business, and then I didn't see him or feel him taking on any sort of like, oh, let's do this or let's do that. So I was then coming home to running our relationship.
Right. Yes.
I was always in my masculine. I was in and I thought, no. This relationship is not serving me. This is the way that I'm working isn't serving me. And it wasn't helping me to be the healthiest version of myself as I can be. And so really turning up the volume on my feminine energy, both at work, professionally, and personally, has made all the difference as to how I get so much done with so little strain on my physical health.
Right. And it is such an important piece. You even say in the book WomenCode that, in the beginning this wasn't even part of your protocol, and then, eventually you started to realize, and now it's such a large piece of the protocol. I mean, in addition to the food, if you do the food and the lifestyle things, that's important, but this piece just kind of brings it all together for people, I think.
Well, I think it's, for me, being such a science nerd, I absolutely wasn't looking for this at all,
right.
But seeing it in action, it makes the essential difference between whether you do the typical thing that happens when you change your diet, which is like you do it really well for a few weeks,
right,
and then you fall off the wagon and you self-sabotage and you're back to square one. How do we create true change and sustainable changes? For me, it was the game of incorporating this idea of the feminine, because if we are more connected to our feminine energy and that ratio of masculine and feminine is balanced, we're not going to self-sabotage. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
And I've seen it in, over a decade of working with women, that this is a lifestyle that I've been living it for 15 years. Many of our graduates have been living it for over 10 years. This is a way that you can be and exist in the world. And it doesn't ever have to stop, which I think is really great. So many other diets, it's like you can only do it for a week because it's so crazy and extreme.
Right.
And then you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? This is very different. This is one that's really all about working with our natural strengths.
Right. Now, if women, once they get the book and they kind of understand this, and then they're like, help, I need more help. I know that you, at your website, flowliving.com, have actually created some different programs where they can get the one-on-one help they need and have people kind of work with them to customize and individualize their own program. So before we end, I just want to ask if you can explain a little bit about that and what you can provide to people no matter where they are in the world.
Absolutely. I think that women, need a little bit of hand-holding at the start of this because it's such a new concept, and I hope the book inspires you to get started on your own. But if you do need more help, come to flowliving.com. We've created something pretty cool and unique in the world. Actually, last year, with the help of some really extraordinary people, we launched the world's first online hormone improvement platform. So it's the WomenCode system online. Think of it like Rosetta Stone for your ovaries meets Weight Watchers, right? So you can log in, you do all your thing, and you learn the protocol. You go through it step by step. But then if you need any sort of individual support, you can, through video chat, you can talk to any of our coaches from anywhere in the world and get that individual attention to make sure that you're making the right changes at the right time for your body and addressing your specific concerns. And it's been just so exciting. We have women in 6 continents, thousands of women in 6 continents using the system online.
Wow.
My dream is to see, every ovary going through the WomenCode system, because, in today's world and in our environment where xenoestrogens, chemicals, pesticides, all of these things in our products in our environment are at an all-time high, women's endocrine systems are under siege like no other time in human history. And I want us all to be able to experience healthy periods, healthy fertility, healthy sex drive, and look and feel beautiful all throughout our lives. And the key is learning how to access this code. So
Right.
for me, it's all about bringing the joy back to women's health and a new future.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for not accepting what the doctors told you years ago and for looking further and then sharing that with other people. So again, anybody that's interested, it's WomenCode, and I'm really excited about the book, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye everyone.